On today's episode of Locked On Suns, everything you need to know about Devin Booker's groin strain and how the Suns can stop getting blown out by mediocre teams. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 6 seasons and a writer at Suns.com and Dime Magazine. Thank you all for making Locked On Suns your first listen here on this Thursday, making our way through a holiday week. If you're traveling, if you're home, if you're with the kids, if you're off work, if you're at work, welcome to the show. Hit subscribe or follow wherever you're finding us. If you have not done so already, we're here for you every Monday through Friday, getting you everything you need to know about the Suns. That's basically the long and short of it. Today, well, there's been better days when it comes to this Phoenix Suns squad, but that gives us plenty to talk about nevertheless. Suns lost 127-102 at Washington tonight on the second night of a back-to-back. Normally, we would really break this game down in detail. I would give you my moment of the game, takeaway of the game, but we're not going to do that tonight because the other big Suns news, bigger than just this random regular season loss, was the update on Devin Booker. So he is going to be reevaluated in 4 weeks, which would be obviously January 28th, reevaluated, all right? So that doesn't mean he's coming back that day. That could mean he misses 2 more weeks. We don't necessarily know fully what the details will be. That would make him miss 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 games. If he came back on January 28th, he would be playing at San Antonio on a little one-off game. So maybe you don't shoot for that. Maybe more likely would be the 30th of January at home against the Toronto Raptors. I want to break this down piece by piece, okay, just to get you up to date with what's going on. So let's actually rewind first, and we look at the hamstring strain that Booker suffered, which I believe was the Chicago game. No, it was the first Houston game. No, it was the San Antonio game. That sounds more appropriate. And he won that game. The Suns won that game. Booker leaves with the hamstring injury. He misses games all the way through before returning against the... No, I'm sorry. He played in the San Antonio game. I am off. He returns from that hamstring injury against the New Orleans Pelicans and scores 58 points, which we all remember. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pat myself on the back, but I did feel a little bit worried in the moment that Booker left in the first New Orleans game, but you already all knew that. I felt a little bit worried in that third New Orleans game that he scored 58 in, that he played 42 minutes in that game. He obviously did a lot. I mean, he had, I think, 5 or 6 assists. Yeah, 6 assists in there as well. And had the ball in his hands darn near the entire time he was on the floor, right? Next game up, we hear that's the Lakers at home 2 nights later. Booker's out with a groin soreness. Okay. You know, stuff happens. We know that the upper leg is a problem for him. If you've listened to Brian Windhorst, he had reported during that hamstring related absence that Booker, a lot of these tend to come from Booker changing direction, kind of like if you think of a player running down the floor, maybe he takes a shot and then all of a sudden he's running down back the other direction to get back in transition defense or go up for transition block, as we've seen him do. Whatever the case may be, not anything to be worried about, right? That's what we all thought. He comes back Christmas Day against the Nuggets, Plays 4 minutes and 20 seconds, but really had injured it around the 3 minutes, 55 seconds in. If you go back and watch the game, what would that be? Just just before the 8-minute mark of the game. Booker struggles he's trying to get around a screen, and you can see him pull up. He stays in for another 30 seconds or so and leaves. All right, so that brings us to today, where we finally get this update. Earlier in the week, he had flown back to Phoenix, so that basically put the kibosh on him playing anytime soon. And now we know that it's going to be a month. So I messaged Jeff Stotts, who runs InStreetClothes.com, which is a really good resource. He's really good on Twitter as well. And I just asked him, does this month timeline feel normal to you with this? All right. And what he said is it's more likely in line with a grade 2 strain. So being the not doctor that I am, I asked him, well, what is a grade 2 strain versus a grade 1 strain? The way he described it is a grade 1 would be mild, and the damage is isolated to what he called the microfibers of the muscle, in this case, the groin. He said the muscle tissue remains intact with a grade 1 strain, although there could be some functional limitation, meaning you can't get the full function of the muscle without, pain or whatever. Grade 2 is considered a partial tear, and he said that tear can be in the muscle or the tendon, depending on what the injury specifically is like. And it almost always impacts function, including the strength of that muscle and the range of motion that muscle can go through. And he said, I asked him, could the hamstring soreness or pull have affected the eventual groin problem? And obviously it's impossible to know, but what Jeff said is what we probably all have been thinking. If there was an alteration of sort of his biomechanics, then it's definitely possible. If he was altering, playing differently, moving differently, preferring one side of his leg over the other, or clenching, or whatever. We've all been hurt. We've all had soreness, and you move differently, right? And so he's like, yeah, maybe that could play a part in why Booker eventually had such a severe groin strain after having had the hamstring and then a more minor groin strain. But what that leaves us with is a pretty bad series of events. They've already lost 4 of 5 without Booker. I guess they technically won a second one, so they've lost 4 of 6 without Booker so far. They have this road trip that will take them all the way through January 4th in Cleveland. They have a home game against Miami on the 6th, home game against Cleveland on the 8th, and then they go on an even tougher road trip that is Golden State, Denver, Minnesota, Memphis. And then they have a big homestand with some pretty decently easy teams, although nothing's going to come easily without Booker, but some worse teams, Charlotte, Indiana, even Dallas in there. And then we get to that reevaluation period at the end of January. If the Suns keep on this type of streak, winning a little less than half of those games, let's say, that's 14 games. As I said, let's say they win 6. I'm not even going to go matchup by matchup. I don't even care about it from that perspective, but just let's say they win 6, which would be roughly a similar pace, maybe more like 5, whatever. Let's say 6. They are 20-16 right now. So that would put them at 26-24, barely above 500. And in the standings, they are half a game up on Dallas for the 6th seed right now, and only 1 game up on Sacramento. Now, neither of those teams are making some sort of big charge up the standings. They're not on a big streak, although Dallas has won 4 straight, but they're only 6-4 in their last 10. The Kings have just sort of been hovering there the whole year. I'm not saying that this will happen, but if anyone below them gets hot, maybe that's Portland. Maybe it's Minnesota. I don't know. The Suns are going to be in it. And when Booker comes back, the rest of the season will be about avoiding the play-in. That is what this injury really means. We can talk about the trade ramifications, and I will tomorrow. But for now, this is just about staying afloat and avoiding having to play for your lives when Booker does come back. That's the reality. But if they're going to win any more of these games, if they're even going to get to 6 out of those 14, they're going to need to put in a much better effort than we saw tonight. We'll talk about why they just keep lacking that fight. But first, today's show, guys, brought to you by Rocket Money. If your New Year's goals are to manage your budget better and save money, you need Rocket Money. Rocket Money, formerly known as Truebill, is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills all in one place. Over 80% of people have subscriptions that they've forgotten about, like that streaming service you bought just to watch one show on, or maybe that free trial you never even touched. Rocket Money will quickly and easily identify subscriptions for you so you can stop paying for the ones you don't want. Rocket Money makes canceling subscriptions as easy as a click of a button. Simply find the service you don't want and press cancel, and Rocket Money will cancel it for you. Over 3 million people have used Rocket Money, saving the average person up to $720 per year. I actually just recently had this with a SiriusXM subscription that I did not want. I signed up because I got tickets to something and I got a free month or 3 months or something. I literally never used it. Then lo and behold, they got me for $10.99 or $9.99, whatever it was. I didn't argue with it. It's only $10, but I canceled right away. If I had had Rocket Money, I would have not had to deal with any of that. Probably would have never even gotten close. Stop throwing your money away and cancel unwanted subscriptions. Manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA today. That's rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA. rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA. The Suns lost today, 127-102. There were some positives from this game, so let's start there. DeAndre Ayton, 31 points. I thought there were some good moments for him, having the ball in his hands and having to make a decision. Just in terms of, he had 3 assists. He had a couple plays where he put the ball on the ground and was able to get to a floater or a hook shot. It honestly felt a lot like that game 3 against the Pelicans, which is a game I've referenced a ton. You've heard me do it before, where he was just at full control, at the peak of his powers in terms of the touch that he has. This game felt similar to me. 36 minutes, good game from him. I mean, there's no real way to argue with that. I think you can get into the defense, you can get into the rebounding. He only had 1 defensive rebound, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that DeAndre Ayton was the problem. The Wizards had 60 points in the paint. I happen to think that was a whole team failure, so again, not going to put that on DeAndre Ayton. Mikal Bridges, I thought, was pretty solid as well, especially in the first half. No Bradley Beal for Washington, and so Beal didn't have to guard a really, really threatening player. And so he was able to focus more on offense, and really he was the primary initiator for this Suns team in the first half. He had 17 total points in this game, 5 assists, 0 turnovers. Kind of like an early season Bridges performance. They've been fewer and further between lately. He hasn't had, the guys to take pressure off of him. He hasn't had necessarily the ability to devote attention to offense the way that he might like, and they just haven't had the spacing and ball movement and motion and whatever. He's not a player who's going to be able to consistently rise above the yucky breakdowns that are going on with this Suns team and score anyway. He's much more still an in the flow of the offense type of guy, but in this first half, it felt like he did kind of rise above that. And so, the pace was good. They were just in a better rhythm. The Suns scored 55 points in the first half and 34 in that second quarter especially, which was, the main part where they started to look like they might cut it back, make a game out of it. They did cut the lead down to 1 at one point in the third quarter, but then they had 5 straight possessions where they turned the ball over, and Washington was able to rebuild a double-digit lead heading into the fourth quarter. And then in the fourth quarter, the wheels just came off, and the Suns, I think they knew we're not making a run to come back from double digits again after we just spent, basically all of the second and third quarter doing it. Again, not all good, but I wanted to start with some positives. The big negative to me, more than any one player or one category, again, 60 points in the paint for Washington. They shot 57% overall. Guys like Rui Hachimura, Kristaps Porzingis, Daniel Gafford were just scoring inside at will. The Wizards had 27 assists. All these things are bad. But more than like those things being bad and me saying that was the problem, to me, the problem was the Suns just didn't fight hard enough. And I had some people kind of pushing back on that observation online, just kind of saying like, what do you expect, basically? And I get that. You know, somebody brought up, well, after the Memphis game, everybody's thrilled with the effort level because they beat the Grizzlies at full strength. And then now the next night, we're going to be, down on everything again. I'm not just doing that, though, all right? I actually don't even... You listened to last night's recap. If you didn't, you can. I don't feel like I was over the moon, jumping up and down, celebrating how the Suns played, personally. I mentioned that they shot a lot better from three. I will give them credit for fighting on the glass a lot better against Memphis. They executed their game plan. Different players stepped up. Josh Okogie, Jock Landale. But I don't think I was sitting here saying that yesterday was some sort of turning point and that all the problems were gone. I think if you look at the whole, I just went through some of these recent games that Booker has missed. You had, or even once he played, you had losses to Dallas, to Boston, to New Orleans, Houston, and then recently the Wizards, Grizzlies, and Wizards again, where the Suns just didn't bring it. They just didn't bring it. And I think especially the Dallas, Boston, Houston, and then this game against Washington are perfect examples of what I'm talking about. You can't fight as little as the Suns have in the NBA and win games no matter who is out there, right? I mean, you just can't. Yes, the Wizards have more shot makers. Even without Beal, Kuzma, Porzingis, Hachimura, even Monte Morris, those are all guys who can create their own shot to some extent. And the Suns don't have that. They just don't have it, right? Dwayne Washington was 4 of 12 from the field. But when the same problems crop up time and again, bad turnovers at bad timing. They only had 11 total, but they can't come when 5 times in a row. They can't come late in games. We've seen that. We've seen them lose the rebounding battle. We've seen them fail to drive to the basket, embrace contact, get to the free throw line and take layups, try to get, easy baskets. These are all things that happen every game. Even in the games they win, although I did tell you again, the rebounding was better against Memphis, but they didn't get to the basket against Memphis. They had some poorly timed turnovers at various points in that game. They made a run, even though all that was still happening. Chris Paul has been uncharacteristic with the turnovers. Mikal Bridges has, like I just said, failed to be the type of player, prove that he's the type of player that can rise to another level as a scorer and as a creator, even when things aren't going well. Like, these are all over and over, they're there. If you're the type of person that says, I knew that all along until Booker's here, until there's other injuries, until they make a trade, nothing's really going to change my mind about this team, then so be it. I don't necessarily disagree with you. These problems, some of them, rebounding, free throws, etc., that's been there the whole time. That's been there as long as the Suns have had this group together, since they traded for Chris Paul, even before that, right? These are not new, but it's unavoidable. It's unignorable, and especially without Booker, they can't lose those things on the margins. What Booker allows you to do, what superstars allow you to do, is have problems and overcome them, right? It allows a guy like Mikal Bridges to have big nights even when he's not rising above anything because other players are setting the table for him. It allows you to lose the rebounding battle, but you're so efficient on offense that it doesn't matter, right? Or the turnovers just don't happen because the ball's in Booker's hands late in games, and it's a bucket almost without a doubt, whereas now it's, okay, hot potato, who's going to take the shot and who's going to get the pass and what's the defense doing, and oh crap, we just, ran out of time. It can't keep happening if they want to win these games. They need to stay afloat. They absolutely need to stay out of the play-in. I think this was their 10th loss in December. If they have a month like that in January, it's going to get ugly. It already is ugly right now. I think they can rise out of it as they get healthier. Both Cams coming back in the not too distant future. Landry Shamet shouldn't be out for too long. You know, players will be here even if Booker is not, and they need to start stacking up some wins because right now they're stacking up losses. All right, let's close things out with our usual recap segments. I do want to get into some of the different components of this game in more detail, starting with who's starting. First, today's show, guys, brought to you by the NHTSA. Let's say you're hanging out with some friends, putting back a few drinks, but a few becomes a few too many, and as the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you think of calling for a ride, but you live nearby, you think you can make it home okay, it's no big deal. What are the odds you get pulled over anyway, right? And even so, what's the worst that could happen? Maybe your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you lose your job, or maybe worse, you total your car. Maybe you end up killing somebody. Everyone knows about the risks of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. And that's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe and plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. Today's show also brought to you by My Solar Nerd. If you live in a sunny state like ours, it's very likely you've had people stop by over the years offering you what they call free solar. But we know a lot of these companies aren't even local. They're using misleading tactics just to overcharge you. If you've considered solar but something felt off, you're going to love today's sponsor, My Solar Nerd. Their mission is simple: help you get the best solar system to fit your needs. The guys at MySolarNerd.com are local, and they understand the nuances of going solar here in Arizona. They've been doing it for a while, and they believe an educated customer is a happy customer, and that switching to solar should mean saving money. So once you're ready, they'll put their industry knowledge to work for you and find the best equipment, warranties, and installers in their network. They'll also figure out all the credits and incentives you may qualify for on the back end. Our listeners will get a $50 Amazon gift card when you book a no-commitment evaluation with My Solar Nerd. This promotion only for Locked On listeners and only for homeowners. So visit MySolarNerd.com and select Locked On in the How'd You Hear About Us section and make the switch to solar on your terms. Start your research process today by visiting MySolarNerd.com and show Locked On some love by letting them know we sent you. Folks, going solar doesn't need to be complicated, and MySolarNerd.com makes it easy. All right, closing things out here with a couple of rapid recap segments. The box score oddity of the night, I think, has to go to the starting lineup once again. All right. Talked about this yesterday, and we saw the other side of the coin tonight. Josh Okogie was by no means an elite player today. He was not as big of a difference maker as he usually is. He was a team worst -19. It feels like Monty Williams goes to him late, too late sometimes. Like, for instance, tonight, the Suns are already down 15 points. And especially considering that Okogie's strength is on the defensive end, it makes it that much more surprising to me that they don't just start him, all right? Because, again, he's coming into a game where the Suns are already down 15 in the second quarter. Maybe he came in at the end of the first. I don't remember exactly. Usually tail end of the first. But he's not somebody who's going to go get offense for, right? He's not a scorer. And so it doesn't add up to me why somebody like Jock Landale would get a start, or even earlier in the season when Booker was out against the Pelicans, we saw Dario Saric play. Even Damian Lee, frankly, I don't quite know why he continues to be a bench player. I think the Suns want a little bit of ball handling in that second unit as well. But I would start Okogie because in a game like this, once again, I talked about how Mikal Bridges was able to focus on offense. I think that would have been the case again. You know, you would have seen Okogie probably guarding Monte Morris, and then maybe Bridges is able to guard Kuzma. Still a pretty difficult matchup. It's not like that's a cakewalk, but it just starts to slide everything into place. When you look at tonight, and Jock Landale only has 2 rebounds, Mikal Bridges only has 4, Chris Paul 2. Torrey Craig had 5. I think that's a pretty solid range for him. But you add Okogie, who had 4 in just 21 minutes. What if you put him in the starting lineup and gave him closer to 30 minutes? He probably gets you, 6 or 7 rebounds, maybe a couple more on the offensive glass as well. And you get those extra possessions to start a game. You get a couple more stops or forced turnovers. He had a block tonight early in the game. We're talking about fight, right? We're talking about energy and spirit and competitiveness. The Suns are lacking in that department. Jock Landale's not the difference there. I'm not saying he's not useful in some cases. He played very well last night, especially in that first stint to open the game. It helped their offense get out to a good start against Memphis. But if I'm the Suns, I want players who are going to be throwing the first punch. Landale, not that guy. He's not somebody who's playing with such outrageous force and energy that he's going to make a huge difference. Okogie is. All right. I want to close things out. I mean, a bench mob vibe check is sort of what we just did. I want to talk about Dwayne Washington, though, and just his consistency. This is why none of my tweets, not that that matters to any of you, but no tweet will ever do better than a tweet about Dwayne Washington when it comes to Suns fans on Twitter.com. And it's understandable. I mean, I was fawning over this guy when they were able to go snag him in the offseason on a 2-way contract. The talent is obvious. The dude can make shots that not many players in the league can make, frankly. I mean, we saw that during his big second quarter, really big game last night against Memphis. But the consistency is why he's not a key part of the rotation night in and night out. He was 4 of 12 from the field, and you can tell early. If his first few shots don't go in, he doesn't really have a backup plan because the defense doesn't give him the attention that he's used to when he's in a rhythm, and so then the passing isn't there. The passes aren't there as easily. He's not really a player who gets to the basket. He's very jumper heavy with his diet, and so obviously players aren't going to just keep jacking jumpers if none of them are going in, especially when they're very young on a team with championship aspirations in recent years. So that all adds up to, if his first couple of jumpers don't go in, Washington's not going to have a very impactful night. And so 17 minutes, only 10 points, again, 4 of 12 from the field. He just didn't make that big of a difference. He just didn't really do a whole lot. And when his defense is already a question mark, and again, the passing is more reactive than proactive, it starts to fall apart. So not to be too much of a downer, I think Washington will continue to get minutes while Payne is out especially, and probably as long as Booker is out. Okogie, I hope he starts. We'll see. That'll wrap us up today, though, guys. One more show to close out the week tomorrow, so hit follow, hit subscribe. I want to go through what the best Suns win of the year is so far and what that can tell us about this team. We'll do that tomorrow. Maybe I'll get a guest to come on and go through that with me. Again, hit follow, hit subscribe, whatever platform you're listening on. Make Locked On Suns your first listen every day. In the meantime, go make Locked On Sports Today your second listen to get caught up on everything else going on around the whole sports world. That show's available on all podcast platforms, and I will talk to you all tomorrow.